Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our March 17th council meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call.
Mr. Oja?
Here.
Mr. Menegini?
Here.
Dr. Hayes?
Here.
Mr. Gottstein?
Here.
Mr. Ball?
Yep. Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of March 3rd and the special meeting of March 5th. Any additions or corrections?
No addition or corrections. I make a motion to accept them as they are.
Second.
Motion made by George, supported by Chris. Roll call.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yep.
Mr. Oja?
Yes. Approval manifest 2014-06 in the amount of $396,119.38. Dr. Hayes, any questions?
No questions.
Lee?
Give me a minute here, I had it.
Okay, George?
I got a bunch of them. Start off on the first page, the Board of Review. I noticed there's 4 payments on the 4 people that showed up. Isn't that board only supposed to be 3, Ray?
Board of Review.
There's, we had an alternate that we asked to come to the meeting, and as it turns out, that was a good move because there were 2 occasions when one of the board members had to step down because of a conflict with whoever was coming in. So that person, the alternate, sat in and made the determination.
Well, is that going to be common now, or to have 4 on that board, or?
Well, I think the total cost was $200, and I think that was we did ask him to come, so it was good to have the alternate. That was at Jim's request, so, I honored that request, and we had him also come.
Well, as I remember correctly, that was in December when we appointed, and the actual motion was appoint 3 people to the Board of Review with an extra person to be an alternate.
Right.
And this was recommended by staff in case someone was unable to perform their duties, referring to as if somebody was sick and couldn't perform their duties. I guess I didn't realize there would be a conflict of interest.
Yeah, there were 2 occasions when there was a conflict, and one of the board members had to step down.
Because of neighbor relation?
Relation.
Relation in themselves.
Well, I guess my question, is this going to be common now that he's going to attend all the meetings, or what?
Well, it's appointed every year, so for the Board of Review, you have applications every year. And again, that was at our assessor's recommendation. He requested to have the extra person at the meeting. So if you ask him to come to the meeting and he performs, you pay him for the meeting.
But if there hadn't been a conflict of interest, the 3 people could have taken care of it.
We could have, yeah, could have.
I don't know,
Again, at the assessor's request, he did ask the person to come to the
the
meeting.
money doesn't bother me. I think it's the intent of the motion was not being followed.
I'm not real happy with the answer either. I mean, you, in the middle of the stream, you switch canoes here.
Well, it sounds like the intent was followed. They needed the extra person for that meeting. I guess your question was, are we going to do this for every meeting? I guess I didn't hear an answer.
Well, Board of Review only meets once a year, so
Oh.
they've already met for the year. So next year, when we look to appoint, we'll look at who we get for.
Okay, so it sounds like it was needed for that particular meeting.
But they didn't know that before.
And would we have paid them if there weren't any conflicts of interest?
I think the original intent was that we were going to pay him because we asked him to come to the meeting. Typically, when you have an alternate, they would come, or on their own volition, you know, if you have a full board, or if there was somebody that was sick, you would ask them to come, you know, they would know ahead of time, so. Again, I just, you know, that was a request from the assessor to have him participate.
Well, I think it would have been nice if you had informed us of that before the board started to meet.
I agree with Lee. I'm not too happy with that situation. Down in the next category here on buildings and grounds, the first two. Trish or Mary, is it possible when you put these in the manifest to, like the first two items, two 30-watt bulbs, 32-watt light bulbs, and then the next line it says 1 CS 32-watt line flow bulbs and ballasts. It's hard to determine, you know, is there one bulb, or I would assume there'd be two bulbs, and one ballast, or how many ballasts? I know you're cramped for space, and it's hard possibly to put an exclamation on some of this stuff, the amount of items or how many items there are. But you look over to the right, and for $157, you don't know if there's one, two, a dozen. I mean, I don't know. I find it kind of hard to understand what we're, the price of what we're
Joe, do
getting.
you know how many bulbs are in a case? 'Cause that was one case,
Well,
so.
I'm not-
This is a full case of 32-watt line flow bulbs. And I'm not sure about the backslash and the ballast part. They might have bought an extra ballast. I'm not familiar with the purchase, but I can surely find out and report back to Ray. He can let everybody know
Joe,
what
to
it
me, it
is.
isn't a question of the price of anything
No.
here. It's the
Yeah.
price of quantity.
I
Well,
understand
that was
what,
just- that's why I
that's-
was asking, because that was, the second one is for one case of bulbs.
yeah.
Yeah, well, that's my point. It's
And-
hard to determine which is.
There's
what
about
and what to
16
buy.
bulbs in a case,
Yeah.
George. But I'm sure that they're just writing down what's on the invoice.
No,
So,
that's why I'm just
yeah.
asking Mary or Tricia if there's a way that we could
Yeah.
get a little bit, I know it's hard to cramp all that stuff in there, but to get a little bit better explanation on it. And then down the second line from the bottom on that page, 2014 dues for in 4-foot/3 PT. No, would there be an explanation on that from the police
It's
department?
four full-time, 3 part-time. It's the consortium dues for the officers, 4 full-time officers, 3 part-time.
Okay, and what is that, or dues, okay. Okay, that's for the first page. Then on the next page, page 2, that's $1,600 down on the last column, right down on the last group on the bottom. Municipal employees retirement, retirement contribution. Is this for, I guess, why is this taken out of the recreation department? I guess that is my concern there.
Because half of Kurt's benefits come out of recreation and half out of golf.
So this is just half of his retirement fund?
Yeah.
Is that for 1 month?
Yes, for February.
$3,200?
That's the city's contribution to the group that he's in.
To the group that he's in. How many are in that group?
There's only 4 active in that group.
Oh, so it's not just one.
That's the supervisor's group, and there's only 4 active in there.
And the next page, Trish, I'd like to, that $1,259.30 from Spring Valley Ranch, I'd like to quote made on that, so I'm not supportive of that group there, or that price. then on page 8, that RGB Consulting Services for the water fund at $10,368. Is this something that was done already, Ray, or is it coming up, or screening database development?
That's part of, that's part of the project, isn't it? Yeah,
Yes.
that's part of the
The
project.
water automation project that we've completed, George, that was approved by city council to move forward on.
That's already done?
Yeah, it's already finished, yeah, that's why it's been paid.
I guess, okay, I don't want to be picky, but back on page 5 too, Joe, the bottom, Energis high voltage transformer resource for a spare transformer for substation. What substation might that be for?
That's the main sub, George, that's our spare that we bought.
Okay. And that is, must be a small transformer for that?
No, it's not for the cost of the transformer, George. The transformer is a large substation transformer.
Yeah, that we just got?
Yeah, that we bought from South Dakota, the great big
Yeah.
one. Okay. That was to put the bushings on it when it got here and delivered, and then do all the testing that's required, and put nitrogen on top of it and all that stuff.
Yeah, okay. That
Yep.
was just one other. I know when we, on stuff that we do, it's spread out over everybody. You know, when we purchase things, they're spread out. But when we charge, you got two part-time employees in the garbage collection here, and they get charged like every other department for payroll check stubs. To me, when you got two part-time employees and you gotta charge that department $8-9 for check stubs, I guess you're really getting down to the nitty-gritties on some of this stuff that
Is that
makes
based
me
on the
wonder.
number of employees in each department?
We usually just, if it's such a small number like that, we just take it by the number of departments that we have. We don't usually, you know, the bigger ones we'll get into, the bigger cost items, we'll get into the number of employees, but
Yeah.
something like that, we usually just divide it by the number of departments.
That's all I have.
Chris?
All mine were asked and answered.
Lee?
I just had one question here. On page 3, debt service fund, fire truck loan interest, how much do we have left to pay on that fire truck? Do you know that offhand, Mayor?
Not off the top of my head, I can get that to you.
Could you get, I'd appreciate it, thank you. That's all I have.
I don't have anything extra. With that, I'm looking for a motion to approve.
Make a motion, we approve manifest 2014-06, the amount of $396,119.38.
Motion made by Chris, supported by Dr. Hayes. Roll call.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes?
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yes, except for my exemptions there, Trish.
Okay. Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Does anyone from the audience wish to address the council on the minutes manifest or any agenda item? If you do, please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 5 minutes. If not, there'll be time for further comment on any subject at the end of the meeting. Okay, before we go into the regular meeting this evening, we have a public hearing. So I need a motion to go into public hearing.
Make a motion, we go into public hearing.
Support.
Motion made by Lee, supported by Dr. Hayes. Roll call.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yes?
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
The public hearing we're entering into this evening is to discuss the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund application that we did for Strawberry Lake Park. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's this time of year when we evaluate, there's a couple different grant opportunities, projects through the Department of Transportation or Department of Natural Resources that we look for putting applications in as part of the process. Once the application is nearly complete, as we have a public hearing to go over the project. We did have a public meeting, joint meeting with the council, the Planning Commission, and Parks and Rec Committee a couple weeks ago, and we also reviewed the project at that time to get some additional comment. I know the Parks and Recreation Committee has been working hard on this project since, well, for the past year. They've been looking at all of the different types of work that we need to do in our parks, and in this past December, we went through a pretty complete review of all the parks, looking for a priority, which one that most fit potential project for this trust fund application. Remember, there are two types of DNR grants that we've been applying for. This particular trust fund grant, which is the larger of the two as far as size of project, and then also the passport, which is what we've been concentrating on, like with the tennis courts. In this particular case, the Strawberry Lake Park, we recognize a number of activities that we wanted to address, some issues we wanted to address within the park. We have Donna Percolosi from Coleman Engineering, who's been working very hard at putting this application together for us. She's here to come up and maybe give a overview of the project. We also have a plan layout, and we have the budget for you within your packet. So why don't I turn it over to Donna, and she can go through it.
Hi, I'm Donna Percolosi with Coleman Engineering. You can see we have a map over here, and there's a map attached in your council packets of Strawberry Lake Park. So the DNR Trust Fund grant is for public outdoor recreation opportunities. So in the 5-year recreation plan that the Parks and Rec Department put together with QPAD, they identified some improvements. So we picked through some of these improvements to include in this application. I'll start with some proposed trail reconstruction on the existing path. We're also planning to put in a canoe kayak launch and the paving of Strawberry Lake Road along with the parking lot near the ice rink. We also have some proposed tree removal with landscaping. You'll see the area that's hatched in red on the east side of Strawberry Lake. We're also planning to put in an irrigation system at the softball field along with the proposed infield replacement. And we're planning to put in some hillside bleachers near the softball field and pave the parking lot up there as well. So we have a lot of different improvements that we're including with this application. The application is due April 1st, so we're just getting all of the documents together and looking for public input and support in regards to the improvements.
Just so the public knows, the part of the trail that we're looking to redo is the southwest corner, probably about a quarter of the way around. In that area this year, we're going to be doing some tree removal. That's not part of this project outside of it, but that area is going to be cleared of the box elder and the dead trees, the dead and dying trees, the box elder, and just cleaned up. So then we're going to be looking to replant at some point in the future more native species tree in that area. One of the big complaints has always been with Strawberry Lake Road is the dust in the summer. That's why we're including it in this project as being paved. We're going to be repaving Strawberry Lake Road from Main Street to almost the entire length of it.
We had that meeting a couple weeks ago, and there were some suggestions brought up. Were any of those suggestions implemented or worked into this, or is this pretty much the same plan that we had coming into the meeting?
We did extend the paving a little bit past the parking area, and let's see, there was another suggestion for a pavilion, but we found out we're almost maxed out. The max grant award is $300,000 with a total project cost of $400,000, and right now we're very close to that $300,000, so we really couldn't afford to add anything else in. And then we had talked about adding in some additional match money, but once you get up to a certain over that total project cost. They don't consider the match equal. It kind of depreciates, so it wouldn't be of any benefit to add any more city work into this application. You certainly could do those improvements. It just wouldn't benefit the application much.
Yeah, right now, we're at $294,700 worth of grant and $103,700 worth of city.
Yep.
And my concern has always been the cost for paving Strawberry Lake Road, and I understand that there is a dust issue there in the summer, but it's almost $100,000 worth of work just to pave that road that maybe could possibly go into doing some other things in the park, but that's just my opinion.
Well, I had a couple of concerns. I'm sorry I couldn't make it to the meeting that we had. It was my understanding we're just going to remove the trees in the west end of the lake and then see what that is. On the east end, that is an old garbage dump, and so I don't know if that's significant.
The part on the west-southwest, we're going to be looking to remove this year during breakup, not as part of this project, just on its own, as its own separate project.
It's my understanding that someone had said that they would take those trees without a cost. to the
Yes,
city.
as I understood, it's supposed to, they're willing to go in there and clean it up, and their cost is going to be, they're going to take the wood. And we're not going to
So
have a
then-
cost.
Then we should be able to, if we're going to do some wood removal on another part, that seems like that would be the same way. It shouldn't cost us anything if someone's willing
But
to.
what we'll be doing is using the match as match component. They'll be donating their time essentially, so we'll be using it as match component in the grant. So that's why that part's included in here. That way we can count it as part of our match, so we don't have to put cash out for that. It helps increase our match without an actual cash outlay.
And I guess I'm glad to see the road paved, but I agree, $100,000 for paving a road seems like an awful lot. We should be able to pave it for $25,000, I would think, if we could have done Botchick Lane for $25,000.
Well, I don't, with the length of it, it's being paved up to the specs of a regular city street. It's not going to have any less pavement because it's not used as much. It's going to be, and with that kind of length, I believe that's probably right when you look at what a block costs.
Well, the price you quote on Botchick Lane was from about 5 years ago. And the cost of asphalt has increased substantially, if not doubled, since that quote. So I doubt if the cost for paving that stretch of Botchick Lane would be $25,000 today. In fact, I know it wouldn't. It might be double that number. And then the length, you'd have to check on the length, whether or not that's equivalent in the length, of Botchick Lane. So it's, could be a couple different factors as to why it's different costs.
Maybe you could enlighten us why it's so expensive, or?
Yeah, like Ray said, the cost of asphalt has gone up significantly, and I am being conservative with my unit prices, knowing that this is all going to happen in a couple years. Once we go through the award process, it'll take some time to get the grant agreement in place. Just simply the length of it, and we're assuming 3 inches thick. So and the math works out right. I had a couple guys check it. So
Okay.
Do we have a footage on the length of that road?
I
'Cause I didn't see any,
don't know off the
or I
top
should
of
say
my
yards,
head.
It's more than 200 yards probably.
I didn't have my worksheets with me, but it looks,
Going all the way past the skating rink there, Lee, so. you've
Yeah,
got-
well, up to the old ball field,
Yeah,
yeah.
actually, I think it goes past the old ball field too.
Yeah.
The ball field.
Yeah.
It'd just be nice to know what kind of footage we're talking there.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
first, I'd like to say, I know a lot of people have put in a lot of hard time, a lot of hard work and time on this, and I appreciate that. But in a way, it is expensive for that road. Again, if we don't have to go to a normal grading of a normal city street, maybe we do. I don't really know. I totally disagree with the money for the the bleachers, I think is way too expensive. I don't know what they're gonna be made out of. And I also think it's kind of ridiculous to pay $20,000 for the canoe kayak launching. But overall, I'm all for the project. There's just some things in here I really don't like. But hate to pass up the $294,000 too. And one other question then, Ray, I think hopefully you can answer this. I asked it at the meeting we had there in March, the earlier meeting. In-kind services, it's $103,000 for the city. How much of that do you think is actually, I'd like it broke down, let me know exactly how much of that you think, or ballpark figure, is gonna be actual cash? Because I'm sure it's not gonna be $103,000 in labor.
Well, there's a...
It'd be nice if it was.
Yeah, and there's the goal in any project that we move forward with for in-kind is to not put in, especially general fund cash, but cash in general. So, you know, we're going to say that right now, that is in-kind, non-cash. Again, the goal for meeting that number, there's material that we're going to contribute, which, you know, has a cash value. That's in that. We've already worked with our gravel and sand. You know, that's counted in. And we're also going to, we are going to raise some outside funds, you know, if we do need to put in cash.
But basically, right now, you can't say how much you think it would be.
No, right now, our plan is to have that all in kind, all right?
But some of it, Lee, like for the electric, there's going to be supplies used, and that's going to be cash, because electric department's going to have to purchase the supplies it uses. So there's going to be some.
We
Right.
could build hillside bleachers out of old power poles, couldn't we? Saves 20,000 right there.
Yeah. I'm sure it'll be all underground.
You know, when we look at the in-kind, again, our focus is no general fund money going into the project. And we've been pretty successful in moving forward. You know, we do have some monies from the timber sales. We have another set of timber sales coming up, but again, you're not going to take all of that money for
Right.
a project. But you may have to have 5,000, you know, something of that range, you know, for the project. We have plenty of room within the timber sale receipts, you know, to handle
I
something.
realize it's gonna benefit the whole city, but I'd just like to see if we could get, I'm sure we'd all like to see it get it done without any actual tax dollars.
One question I had with going through this, for 2 picnic tables, it's $7,400, because it's $2,400 of grant and $5,000 of match. And it's for picnic tables by the softball field, and it shows there's 2. Seems a lot for 2 picnic tables.
We were doing the recycled plastic type. They're about $1,000 a piece, or $1,200 a piece. Can't remember. You get some extra points for being environmentally friendly on these DNR applications, and it was something that,
But it shows $7,400 for the 2 tables, because it's $2,400 of grant, $5,000 of match.
oh, the 500, I think, is just for the installation, so for the city to install those picnic tables and put a concrete pad underneath.
You know, if you take every one of these columns and break them down, I'm sure you could take
Oh, yeah.
this thing and pick it apart, nuts and bolts. But I agree with the young lady, Ms. Perklow, that the picnic tables, you're not getting something that the prisoners are making.
No, I
You know,
understand that, it just
no,
seems like a lot.
just, Jeremy. And the same thing, Lee and Doc, the money for graveling and paving the road over there. I mean, I'm sure both of you know what that area is. You got nothing but muck and junking underneath it. I don't think there's anything there that can even support a road decently. You got city trucks running back and forth constantly over there, you know, dumping snow and everything else. I'm sure the well, I got $25,000 here for doing that, that's gonna be minimum that you're gonna get by once you start, or are you gonna blacktop the road and in 2 years have nothing but junk over there breaking up? I mean, I don't like any of these costs either, but are you gonna do the job and do it the way it should be done? Or are you gonna do it and have it fall apart? You're gonna, no matter what you do here, you're gonna get a lot of criticism from the rest of the community. Because you're putting a lot of money into an area, basically gets used a lot at times. But, I mean, the same thing with that blacktop. The first thing you're gonna hear is that money could be spent a heck of a lot better in town, you're blacktopping one of the streets. So you're gonna get criticized on no matter what you do with this project.
But the grant is for there. We can't take any of that money.
Well,
So I'd love to
that's-
take
that's
that
it.
money and
Yeah.
put it someplace else and do more streets, but it's not for that. That has to go
Exactly.
there.
I mean, sure,
And when they give you the money, you better spend it where you say you're gonna.
When we looked at the components of the project, we looked at comments that we received over the years on complaints at the park or comments for improvements to the park. The, the dust and the road condition has been a continuous comment or complaint. One justification of that for doing this as a specified street is that it actually is on our Act 51 map. It's labeled as a local street. The other is that for emergency purposes, the fire and ambulance use Strawberry Lake Road as an alternative if there happened to be a call where you have a train blocking US 2, where they have an alternative access around that situation going through the viaduct. So it does have a component of through traffic. We did not extend that past the intersection. We extended it past the parking area at the softball field because we wanted to make sure that the road was adequately separated from the parking area, and it was a road, not just an entrance to a park. So, the width and the construction of the road is designed for the travel. The other areas that we had some concern, that we're trying to address some concerns, is like the parking area by the ice rink. Right now, there are concerns that the parking area and the ice rink, that whole area kind of melds together. There's not a real definitive parking stopping area, and so by adding that parking area and a few of the benches, separating the actual rink from the parking area, it will define that for traffic. I mean, we have the same problem out at Marion Park with the softball, or with the soccer fields, and even around the baseball fields. People will travel, and they just kind of travel to where they want to go, as opposed to, a good traffic policy is to guide people and have them organized, that'll provide for safety. So that was an area we were trying to address. Obviously, the trail improvements, that southwest corner, that whole section, that subbase needs to be completely redone around there, and the trail, the conditions of that trail in that section reflect that. The tree removal, cleanup, again, that's parts of that is safety, where every windstorm we're over picking up limbs, large limbs off the trail. It's something that we want to clean up. Plus, the park itself in that southwest corner, and then in the area that's hatched right now in the east side, those are areas that have a lot of downfall, and those are our main areas of concern. The canoe ramp, that was something that we're addressing. A couple of concerns. One is that for our ice fishermen, that bring shacks out, that would be an area that they could take their HUVs down through, because that's what we heard, four-wheelers and HUVs, they want to come down and use the path. Right now, they're using a walking path to get the shacks out onto the lake. That is not a real good practice. In fact, it's a violation of our MDOT rules for the grant that we received previously to put that in place, and also the DNR grant from way back when we first put in the trail. As a non-motorized, we can use motorized to clean the trail and maintain the trail, but to actually traverse on the trail is not supposed to be allowed. So what we thought is we'd come off of the area by the garden, the abandoned garden right now, and that was a nice stretch to get in. It was not going to be designed for any kind of, not like a boat ramp design for vehicles, but light enough, where your HUVs and your four-wheelers could go through, get onto the lake. During the summer, you could take your canoe from the parking area, your kayak from the parking area, and bring it down. I know that based on if you walk down in that area, it doesn't go. It's not a straight shot. It kind of goes down and then it curves to the east. It follows a slope, so it's gonna have a more, it's gonna follow the contour so that you have a nice even slope down to the lake. But it's going to be hard enough that it could be ADA compliant, but it's not paved or anything of that order. It's going to have a rustic feel to it. So it's not going to have a real finite or polished, feel to it like you would a boat ramp or something. And then down on the end, when you actually get to the lake's edge, there's not going to be a whole lot of fanfare there. I mean, it's going to have an area, a hard area. That's probably where a lot of the cost comes in. You got to have a hard area for someone, especially in a wheelchair, to actually be safely at the edge of the water. But we're not putting out a dock or anything like that. I mean, it's going to be, again, rustic in feel, but again, we want to make sure that no vehicles go down through that path. So, I mean, we looked at a lot of different things for the park, but this is what sort of fished out for us.
I have one other question then. The proposed trail reconstruction, you said they're going to muck it out a little bit. Do we have any idea how deep we're going to have to go? Because I don't remember when they did it the first time, but if you've taken a walk over there, you know how bad it's sunk.
What I was planning in this estimate was to excavate about a half a foot down and then put the geogrid, like a stabilization, and then put 6 inches of aggregate and then resurface the
That
top.
mesh, is that what you're?
Yeah,
mesh?
it's like a
Okay.
plastic.
And that works really well.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, I
we've had
know
good
that's-
success
okay.
with that.
Yeah,
When
we
the
use-
first trail was put in, I think they're supposed to have put in 2 feet of rock underneath the trail, but the way it sunk, I don't think so.
Well, you can put 2 feet, but if there's 6 foot of muck,
Yeah.
there's no way. I don't think there's any way. It's kind of when we did the road project over here by the feed mill. You don't know how far you're going to go down. So that geogrid really has worked out well on a number of our projects. One last thing, the softball field, anticipating maybe some concerns as to why put energy into that field, but from the baseball and softball community, there's so much activity going on in this area that they are very supportive of additional fields, and that this will get used. The minor leagues use it, the girls softball.
The girls' softball has exploded.
Yeah, and there's planning to have an official high school softball field out at Marion Park. We already have that in our Marion Park plan. But even with that project in the future, this one, they're very supportive of getting as many fields as they can, because they just don't have enough for practices and for some of the games. So, as we know, in order to keep a decent field, you need the irrigation. We're going to use lake water, so that's part of the project to irrigate it, not with potable water, but with lake water. So that's part of the cost associated with this project. Then there's a shed that will be used for equipment and other, and actually it's gonna pair with or be dual use for a concession, because concessions is how they help raise money to help put back into the fields. So anytime they have the sporting events, especially with the kids, the concessions is a big concern, big money maker actually to help again with operations. There was some question about putting a bathroom down in that area, because with little kids, they can't go too far, and they gotta go. But, you know, we're a little leery. We didn't want to put that into this project right now because we wanted to get the main field up and operating. There's a bathroom down at the warming shelter, which is quite a distance. We thought that in the short term, we would just use the porta-johns and work with them. So down the road, if there's additional projects, if there's additional things we want to do, and if there's so much activity over there that it warrants it, then we can look at that in the future.
There's almost $70,000 for it just going towards that baseball field.
Yep.
Out of this grant.
A major cleanup, and it's getting used now by, I think Jeff here, so here with Coleman as well, and you work with the kids with softball.
With the softball, yeah, there's about, you don't quote me, just with the minor leagues, there's at least 3 teams that go down there on a regular basis with softball kids and stuff, so. We're always looking for field, and they're always being used, especially that time of year.
I'd like to say I'm real happy that we're doing this project. I think it just indicates that the community thinks that this is an important area. 20 years ago, it was an abandoned area and a taboo area, and I'd like to see everybody using it. I'm particularly pleased that we are paving the street because I think that street gets more business than a lot of our streets downtown. So I certainly don't want to sound like I'm objecting to anything that's planned there. The only thing I'm concerned about is removing all the trees. I guess we'll see what it looks like when we do the southwest corner.
I don't think we had that conversation in quite some detail. You know, we have Otto Jacob, forester, that's been looking at the project, you know, from the forestry end, and there are a number of quality trees within the area, so it's not a clear cut. It's a cleanup. There's an invasive species issue down there, so we want to address that.
Box elder,
as well. Well, box elder is a weed tree, you know, and an invasive type of species. So we want to clean that out and replant. I mean, we've done a lot of work in replanting, you know, in the community, and our parks should be the beneficiary of this project. So we're gonna look at very, you know, wide range of different types of species to put in.
Well, let's see what it looks like in the southwest before we do too much cutting over there, but, because again, we don't want it to look like a moonscape either.
No, and
People enjoy walking through it because there is shade under the trees.
And in reality, you know, the project goes in April 1st. We probably would not hear anything back until October-ish. You have 3 years actually to complete a project under the program. So, you know, realistically, this project is probably 2 years out. So there's a lot of time, you know, to address the details. The reason we didn't pick the southwest corner in this project is we wanted to go in, I think just what you're saying, we wanted to go in, we have somebody that's willing to go in and do some work now, and we just felt like that's a good test case. I think what you're getting at. I mean, that's a good test case. Go in and work on it.
And the other thing that could be included here is that there's certain elements of the community that always want to see more chips on that, because so I don't know if you could have put it to the project, adding chips to the playground there, because those are always deteriorating. In fact, the box elder could be chipped and thrown in there maybe.
Not sure it's,
It's a maple.
okay.
That's what they require, hardwood. And again, you only have to remove the female box elder trees. The male box elders don't attract the box elder beetles. And the last comment I'd have is that my dream is that we someday would get a pavilion down there. I'm glad that someone else brought that up at your public meeting. It would be certainly great if we could have a pavilion down there for community events that would cover the ice rink in the winter, so it wouldn't have to be plowed. It could extend the season quite a bit, keep the sun off the ice so it wouldn't melt, and it would probably promote skating. So I was hoping we could work with the bracket fund on something like that, and even include that into this project. But again, that's a couple of years down the line, perhaps. But and then that would also provide a place for people to walk. I encourage everybody to walk because there's so many health benefits to it. And the one problem is that a lot of us don't like to walk on ice in the wintertime, so if there was some place we could walk in the wintertime, that would help promote good health year-round.
Does anyone from the public wish to comment? Does anyone from the council? Any other comments from the council or the staff? Are there any other comments?
Yeah, just one last comment. We have received some very nice letters of support. We have a list of group of individuals from the community that have been participating in community planning effort, and of course our boards and committees have sent out emails to them, and so I've been receiving some of those letters, very, very nice letters of support. Anybody can write a letter of support, as long as we can get it here into the next week. This will show on the TV on Wednesday and Friday. I don't know, when's the latest that you could possibly get a letter to put into the packet? It's actually filed electronically, so.
It's due April 1st, but we can always add letters. That's real easy. So I just say a few days before April 1st. It's a new process. We're submitting this electronically, which we haven't done in the past. So I'm suspecting the system is going to slow down the closer we get to April 1st. So I'd say within the last week of March would be good.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other comments? Is there any other comments? Is there any other comments? Hearing none, I need a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion, we close the public hearing, go back into regular session.
Motion made by Lee, supported by Chris. Roll call.
Mr. Ball?
Yep.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Okay, this evening, ladies and gentlemen, we have 5 things on our communications. The first one is Resolution 2014-07, the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund Grant Application, Strawberry Lake Park. We've just held our public hearing on it, and unless there's any other comments the council would like to make, I'm looking for a motion.
Make a motion, we approve resolution 2014-7.
Support.
Motion made by Dr. Hayes, supported by Lee. Roll call.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yeah.
Resolution 2014-08, Recreation Passport Grant Application, Marion Park Tennis Courts. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are currently working on the first 2 courts through last year's passport grant award. We would like to put in an additional grant application this year, 2014. This, if successful, this project would go in 2015, and this would complete the set of, this would be an additional 2 courts. It would be finish off the 4 courts that we have overall planned for Marion Park. It's exactly the same application that we had last year. And Jeff Gilroy from Coleman has been working on this. Do you have any words of wisdom on this?
It's pretty much the same deal as last year. A lot of the same materials are in this application as were in the last year's, 2 tennis courts, fencing, an additional bench, some ADA signage and markings to get an additional handicapped parking stalls for the other ramp.
Little less pathway though, right? Because
Little less,
pathways
yeah,
are
the
the first
pathways cost covered under the last project, so a little less pathway, but for the most part, it's pretty much the same application as last year. If there's any
Okay.
questions.
What is force account? It says force account match.
Force account, there was a little bit of confusion over the in-kind, I think it's just the definition of the in-kind and the force account is essentially the same thing, but they broke out the in-kind services, which they consider more of a donation of time, that, would be not, professional services. So like if you had a donation, you know, like if school kids come down and put some time into it and they could charge your time, you know, their time as in-kind services. But if you have an architect, a plumber, somebody like that, that came down and donated their time, they consider that more of a forced account, as opposed to in-kind, because and there was some, and they're gonna clear this up in their next, in the 2015 application. But the wording that was this year was in-kind / forced account was that no more than 15% of your match could be so-called in-kind services. So, you know, the city but after talking to Christine Bias and the application fundraisers, they said that the city's workers or whoever is gonna be out there working on it that would be representing the city would be considered not in-kind, it'd be considered under this forced account.
Because they're professional and what
Yes,
they do.
yes.
I think, in the past, force account also meant, like material,
Yeah, and it could be
material
material,
donation,
yeah.
or, you know, if we included the material.
Yeah, and I just think the in-kind, you know, at least the example they gave me, because when I read the reading of it was that only 15% of your match could be in-kind services, but then it didn't really follow that, so I just got rid of the in-kind service. You know, it's more of a definition thing for the Department of Natural Resources than it is where the material's coming from.
Okay.
All right?
That was new to me. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, and I hadn't seen that either. Like I said, it took me a while to fish that out with the DNR.
MDOT
agency.
uses force account.
Yeah, okay.
That's where I've run into that.
And this would, if we got this would complete our 4 courts. That would let us take the other 4 and turn them into a parking area.
Yes, that is the plan when we're completed, is that we desperately need to work on the soccer field, you know, that control of the parking area and from a safety standpoint, clean that up.
One question, Ray, I don't know if anybody here remembers, when were those tennis courts put in out there?
I believe in 86 or 88. I know I played on the lake courts in 84, so
Okay.
it was after that.
I would like to make the comment that because we purchased the land from Spring Valley Ranch, we were able to annex this park into our city limits. And it's now in the city rather than in the township.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you. I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion that resolution 2014-08 be approved.
Second.
Motion made by Lee, supported by Dr. Hayes. Roll call.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes. Approval Resolution 2014-09, Oak Crest Golf Course 2014 Green Fees and Special Fees. Going into this next upcoming golf season, we're only going to be making a few changes to the greens fees rates for the Oak Crest Golf Course. If there's going to be a $1 fee increase for the condition level 2 and level 3 rates for 18 holes, and special rate for the senior all-week 18 holes. Just a $1 increase at those times on that particular item. Just the 18-hole green fee, condition level 2, condition level 3, and the senior rate, special rate for seniors all week. All the other rates at this time are being held the same.
Were we gonna adjust the discount for city residents when we're talking about 10%?
I think and we did adjust that last year?
We still have, we adjusted it, it's still at 20% in this.
Oh, yeah, we need to adjust that to 10%.
Do we need to state that business owner clause we added in last year?
I think that 20% discount was just for the green fees. It was for the yearly membership, and then that was kind of canceled.
Are we still doing it?
I thought we discussed of not giving that back, the yearly fee versus just the 20% for somebody wants to go out there for 18 holes at a time, whatever, just the regular green fee, not membership.
How you want to do that?
I don't remember.
We discounted, we took the 20% on the memberships and brought it back down to 10.
That's what
Is
I
that
thought
what
we
it was?
did.
Oh, okay.
Right, and then you included the business owners.
That's what it was, okay.
And that
And that was
should-
10% on that then? Was that 10% on the business, on the?
Right, but it had to be the actual business owner.
Right,
It was one person per
or
business.
per
The owner.
business, one per business.
If the business had multiple owners, they had to fight over it.
Basically, had to
And that was
decide.
on the yearly fee,
Yeah, that was on the membership.
okay.
And that's actually already been changed. That's just a mistake on this sheet that has to be corrected.
Well, this is, and really, this is, the green fees and the memberships run two different votes, so, it really is up to you guys how you want to handle that, so it's an easy change for us to make that 10%. on a
Lee,
green
do we want to keep the discount on the green fees at 20% and just leave
I
the
would say
membership at 10%?
yes, on the green fees, 20%.
It's everybody else then. Doc, George, any?
Don't give one care.
Okay, I'll agree.
Give it away.
I'll take you golfing someday this summer, George.
No, that's okay, Lee. I spent too much time in the woods when I did golf, that's why I don't want to care about it.
Anything else? With that, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion that Resolution 2014-09 be approved to allow the city manager the authority to make minor changes or additions to the schedule as needed throughout the golfing season.
Support.
Motion made by Lee, supported by Chris. Roll call.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yeah.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Next, approval Sturgeon Falls Hydroelectric Facility Generator Number 2 repairs. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to turn this over to Joe. He had Ames Control come in and was looking at generator number 2, and he found some work that needed to be done on a pretty urgent basis. So why don't you go ahead and explain what you have?
At the last council meeting, I had told you there were some issues, but at that time, I was unable to elaborate on them. Now I can elaborate on the problems with number 2. When we were starting it up to put it online a couple weeks ago, I was down by the unit when it was coming on, and I heard a loud clicking noise. So we shut the unit off, and we looked at it and found an area where the rotor was rubbing on the stator winding and actually rubbed the paint off of some of the steel spacers between the windings and the stator. And so we shut it off permanently and called Ames. They came up for a visit and looked at it with me. And we came up to the conclusion that the unit needed to be red tagged until the stator winding could be moved to increase the clearance, the air gap, if you will, between the stator and the rotating magnetic field. We feel that over the years, the babbited bearings that hold the rotor in place have worn enough to compromise that air gap. And at this point, with spring runoff very near, it is a lot less expensive to move the rotor and the stator winding 30 thousandths of an inch over to get enough air gap so it will properly operate through spring runoff. And when that's complete, then we're going to reevaluate the situation and look at why that rotating field is getting closer on the one side of the machine. I think it's Babbitt wear. We might have to have the Babbitts reworked and resurfaced on that unit.
If we do this now, will we have it done before spring runoff?
Yes, it'll be done. It'll be ready to go.
Joe, was that, when they put them new turbines in, did they align that with your rotor?
No, I know
like
what
they
you're
did
talking
on
about.
On unit one?
On unit number one, yes, they actually moved the generator.
Yeah, I remember.
Because it was off, and that was what was making the shaft fluctuate in the middle.
Right.
Because it wasn't truly in line. This unit was in line, and this shaft is half the distance
Yeah.
as the other side. So that wasn't an issue on this side.
Was or wasn't?
Was not an issue. It was not an issue on the smaller unit when the new turbines were installed. Like I said, I believe that it's just wear on the Babbitts over time, and it allowed, I'm trying to give you the shortest version possible, but when I keep talking, it just keeps getting deeper here. As the magnetic field rotates around the stator, it has different magnetic pulls at different places around the winding area. And in this particular winding, it pulls it together, not pushes it apart. And there's enough play in the Babbitt that it gets close right there. That's just the way it works, so.
And then this is the patch to get us through, and then we'll look at what we need to do.
That is correct, yeah.
Are they gonna check them all then, Joe, on the whole wheel, or are they just gonna repair that one?
We're going to, George, the stator winding, the very outermost part of that generator, the
Yeah.
big round part.
Right.
We're actually gonna pick that up and move it over 30 thousandths of an inch
Okay,
to get clearance on the upstream side.
okay.
And then when will you attempt to make the permanent fix on it, when we have low water?
After spring runoff, when we no longer need the unit, I think then we'll be looking more closely at the Babbitts. There's two sets of Babbitts on that unit, and it's about 6 to 8 weeks to get some new Babbitts made for it, if that proves out to be the case at the time.
Is there a way, Joe, to check to see if there's any wear on that Babbitt, or, and can you
Not with-
jack it around to see if, what kind of wear you got?
You'd have to pull them totally out, and one of the issues is you don't know the thickness of the Babbitt when it was installed new. I mean, we just don't.
Yeah,
I have a set of Babbitts in the shed that we found when we tore down a shed that was down there. I don't know if it's the exact same Babbitt or not, but we'll look into that. But to get it going right now, I just need to move the stator winding that 330 thousandths of an inch.
Any other questions? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
I make the motion we approve the Sturgeon Falls hydroelectric for repairs for generator on Unit 2 for the amount of $6,910.
Second.
Motion made by George, supported by Chris. Roll call.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yep.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
The final thing on the agenda this evening is the approval of the MERS Division 10 amortization schedule. This was discussed last week when we decided to close the MERS group for the electric department employees, and it was said then that this week we'd be having to choose which schedule we want. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the mayor mentioned, that we did close the group at the last meeting. You have the two options that you can choose one of the two options on the schedule. Mary and I went through and analyzed in some detail the cumulative financial effect of both options. Option A has a shorter time period of hitting that peak, but then again has a quicker fall off and gets us out of that situation at a quicker rate. Option B spreads it out, spreads the peak out a little bit, but one of the factors in us, Mary and I both making a recommendation is that under option A, we'd actually spend $200,000 less over the life of the schedule. So our recommendation is to go with the option A. The effect, the net effect on the actual rate would be, is really negligible compared between the two. And also want to make, just make council aware that how we handle the rate issue, that can be handled under normal budget appropriation, our budget hearing, because this is not going to be kicked in right away. So we have some time to go through that discussion. What we do have to do, though, within a very short period of time here is to select which schedule. So again, from administrative standpoint, it is our recommendation to choose that option A. That will save you $200,000 over the term of the schedule.
Personally, for me, I'm just going to kind of make the same point I made last time. With with not closing the group in the hybrid, we would still have reduced the liability without raising the rates at all. It would have been much slower. It would have been a lot longer period of time. But it still would have reduced the pension liability in the group. And
And how much more would it have cost than these figures here?
Well, we don't have that, I don't have that figure in front of me. Lee, that would be, you know, basically, by not closing the group, that would have been, you know, the continuation of the schedule that we're on. So it keeps rolling at a 28-year period, so those are recalculated every year. So it's a much harder calculation to account for than the closing of the group calculation that they made for us.
Well, I'm all for Schedule A, or Option A, which will save us $200,000 compared to Option B.
Mary, can I ask a kind of a question? I don't know, maybe you might have an answer, maybe some. Would these schedules, I mean, you got, what, 7 employees that are on this, that is accounted on here? Say if 2 employees, say, die, and you're off your, say after early retirement, and then they pass away. Does that change this in any way, Ray or Mary?
Yeah.
Does anybody ever?
Yeah, they're.
I mean, I'm not looking for that scenario, but to say, you know, is this?
Here's, I know what your question is.
Or if somebody quits?
But, okay, here's how they calculate out your liability, your pension liability, is they have to use a series of factors of estimated factors.
Yeah, no.
You know, how long you're going to work
Yeah.
if you're still working, how long you're going to live after you retire, you know, and those are all up in the air. The 7 that you refer to is actually, when they made this first table, you know, we had the 7 employees. We are, you know, if you look at the table, they've actually stepped it down to the 4 that we've identified. So they've taken account for that. In the retirement group, if someone passes away, their liability is, we're no longer paying out from the fund. So then that is accounted for in the next year's calculation for when they look at your liability, the city's liability. So it wouldn't account for it until after a year after, when they do the reamortization. But it does have a positive effect on the fund as a liability standpoint.
I mean, would that reduce our payments, say, down the road then, Ray? I mean, that is kind of what my point is.
If,
Not that-
there's two factors that could reduce your payments. In this particular schedule, they're going to set us up, we're gonna be set up with a payment, okay? And they're gonna look at the fund as a whole, the group as a whole, and if we were to have two things, if the liability decreases because of some unforeseen events, like someone passing away, or if an investment, because it's just like it's an annuity. So as you put money into I mean, it's an investment that they're drawing from. If the investments increase, then that also could decrease the liability, or at least the underfunded portion. So, those two factors would cause a higher slope of decrease on the amount that you owe.
Okay.
So I think you're correct. You're correct in that evaluation. Now, whether or not they quickly change the chart is probably, it takes a while for that to.
No, I realize that, Ray.
But they could,
I
you're right,
realize-
they could.
My point was, down the road, I mean, just like you say the stock market goes up and they get all of this, I mean, that was the main cause for it to go in the opposite direction, would put us in this shape.
That was
to
one
begin with.
factor.
So it turned around and all of a sudden, they did good on it. And it was funded well. On the back side of this, would we get credit for?
We do.
We would get credit, our payment aren't fixed from now until we're done.
If they do a good job investing, our payment will go down.
That's
Right.
I must
So
say
this
that
could end, basically, it could end sooner.
If they do a
I
poor
mean,
job, it could be.
we're looking at, okay, another question. Is there any way that this could increase? And say another bad investment, and we would have to increase our payments on it? Or are we locked into a point now here
From
where
the,
we're going to be, this is it, or it would decline?
from the investment side, they're restricted on what type of investments they can have. The chance of it really, I know we had some bad returns, like in 2008, there was a very bad return, loss across the board. And what MERS did is they actually spread that loss over, I think it was a six-year period or 8-year period. I think we're just coming out of that now. So I think it was 8, yeah. And so the chances are there, obviously. They're always going to evaluate as long as we have one person in the program, they're always going to evaluate our liability. So, that could happen either way. What they're doing on this schedule is they're basically setting us up into a program, that they, for their best guess, would, take care of the liability in a set period of time. So chances are, I mean, it could go either way.
If they do good, it'll be better for us. If they do poor, then it could be a little more for us.
One other thing, Ray, that, which I had mentioned last 2 weeks ago when we passed this first part of this thing, I would have truthfully liked to maybe spent a little bit more time with the council and Mary and to kind of maybe look around at some of these other things, because I think when we had our meeting, Joe had mentioned this as a possibility on doing this through the electric department and raising a penny. And we kind of all jumped at it because we finally had a, look like a resolution to do something. And, but I would like to maybe possibly take a little bit more time and so let's look around a little bit more and see. Are there any more other possible things out there that we could venture or look at? I mean, I'm open, I'm just making suggestions, Mary, or
Mary, would you answer that question?
Well, I think we've already taken that step, have we not, by closing the group?
I
took that step last meeting to close the group. I mean, there's options.
well, that was my question last week, and we kind of, well, no, we can't, and this is what I had wanted to do this is what I wanted to do last week, is, I'm real interested and want to go this way, because it was the only option that we had brought up and talked about.
Or are you talking about the options for the new hires? The direction we want to go with the new hires? Are you talking about options for them?
Not really, Mary, options that, of paying this off, in which type, how we can pay this off, in which Joe had mentioned of adding it to our electrical bill at a penny a kilowatt.
Well, I think you've got the two options that they presented to us. I think during budget meetings, Ray and I have talked, that's when we'll talk about, what is that number gonna be? We talked about a penny. Does it have to be a penny? Can it be a half a penny? It's not a half a penny, obviously, the whole time. We're gonna have to discuss that, I think, at budget time.
Well, and after Mary ran the numbers, and really, the penny just came from quick calculations and estimating. After
Right.
Mary ran the numbers, it's actually half a penny, not a full penny. So it would be a 4%, not 8%, like I had said last time, half a penny at the max. And a half a penny, not a full penny.
So, I mean, the rest of the council, and you, Chris, I mean, you had made, you hate to pass stuff on and raise the rates. I mean, do you feel that this is?
I still feel this is the right option to go, and I agree with me that, this is the way to get out of this and finally kind of put this to rest and move on with a different plan. And I think that option A is a good option to save some money. And if it's only half a penny increase, even better. I mean, I didn't like the idea of raising rates with everything else that we're gonna have to look at for rates coming up here, but it's something we have to do, unfortunately.
Like I said at the last meeting, as long as we can stay to 10-15% underneath we're giving the citizens of Norway a good deal, and we are doing that. And technically, Ray, correct me if I'm wrong, legally, we had to do this, otherwise those 3 new hirees would get into MERS, which is what we definitely did not want from our last negotiations, trying to get people out of this MERS because of our unfunded liability.
Yeah, we basically have 2 options. And this is 2 options that MERS basically said that we have based on our contract with MERS. One is to continue with a program that has a defined benefit package. Now, there are different types. I presented a hybrid type that limited lowered the defined benefit side of the option as much as possible, because that's what we talked a lot about during negotiations. The second option is to close the group. So there's really, as much as, we wanted to look at all sorts of different options, it really started with just 2. There's 2 ways to go. During the negotiations, we spent a lot of time talking about that issue, and in working with the employees, they were interested in going through with a defined contribution program. So when it comes down to moving forward with a defined contribution program, that means closing the group And so now then, we look at what options are available under closing the group, and there are the two schedules that we must decide on. So you started with, do we close or not close, and if we don't close, then there has to be a defined benefit component in the retirement plan. And, we spent the better part of the year, talking about that, and, we move forward with the defined contribution, plan. Again, I've been talking with MERS for 8+ years on our program. They have been an evolving, this has been an evolving discussion because, 8 years ago, you couldn't even make a plan from, a change from one defined benefit, the B4 to a B3 without closing the group. And over that time, they have made some changes based on members like us that had told them that they needed to come up with solutions, options for us to address our underfunded liabilities. So, we with the pretty much line was drawn in the sand at this point in this past year where, we got some help from the legislature, but they didn't go all the way that I was hoping they would. To not close the group, my whole goal is we can move forward without them closing the group. I've got some different disagreements with them just from a math standpoint. But I don't have standing as an actuarialist, so I kind of lost that argument. But anyway, the options are here. Last meeting we talked about closing the group. We moved on that. So now we have the option A and option B.
I'd like to say that I agree with Jeremy. I don't think we should have closed the group. The rest of the city employees are going to be under some type of, sounds like hybrid option. And so I don't know that we need to close one group and leave the rest of them open. But I guess it's 3-2 anyway, so we should go on from there. As far as the two options, we're going to be paying, it looks like up to $400,000 a year under option A, whereas the option B only peaks around $300,000. And if you look at $200,000 over 30 years, you're going to put in a lot of money ahead of time, so that money would make interest. So I don't think there's that much difference between the two options, except that A gives you a lot higher peak, again up to $400,000, and it peaks earlier. So we're paying more under option A for 15 years to come, and 18 years to come under option B. But again, the peak is a lot lower, so I think option B myself would be a little easier to swallow.
On your spreadsheet that you've done, Mary, with the peak actually being smaller on option B, how come the amount of increase needed is actually higher on option B toward the end?
What was that, Jeremy?
When you look at your sheet,
Yeah,
the rate increase needed to cover, your actual peak on option B is 0.48 cents, 0.0048.
right.
It's lower on option A, even though the peak is higher. So it's going to cost us more money, but it's not going to cost us as much.
But if you look at the peak on option A, after it peaks, it comes down lower. on the
Right.
years.
But that peak is higher. So it's the money needed to cover it. Shouldn't that be higher than any of the peaks, than the peak on B?
The numbers that you're seeing on option A and option B, those are the increase in our cost each year, based on their estimates. It's not the total cost, that's just the increased cost.
The slashed line is, on this chart is what we currently pay.
That's the estimated
It's
cost.
only the difference of this much, because we're currently paying up to the dotted line. And that's what Mary's other spreadsheet represents, where all the math is done on it, to show you what that actually is in dollars.
But yeah, but that's my question with it, was because A peaks higher, so it should cost more than B. Because if you look at the dash line stays relatively level.
But the area under the curve is less.
So should we be totaling these for that option A, so that .448, should that be .00448, be all those added together? Because if that goes, it's how much we needed each year, is it cumulative?
I don't think so, Jeremy. I think what
Because then
you have
the
is-
numbers don't make sense then, because if it's not cumulative, because the peak is lower, but you're saying we have to raise the rates less for a higher peak.
But think of it this way, you have a peak that happens earlier, but the curve getting to that peak is actually, you know, kind of belled in and up. If you take that and spread it out, like option B, the area that's under the curve is actually more in option B,
Right.
total by about $200,000. So the total over the life of the
Over the life,
table,
yes.
right.
But I'm talking about the rate increase needed at that point, at that year.
You can't, you're gonna put the rate increase in right away, I would think, and in the year, 2024, it looks like we're gonna need twice as much money. Instead of 200,000, it'll be 400,000.
Sort of you're banking the increase from when you first started to cover that peak.
That's what we'll be discussing in
But yeah,
budget hearings.
so the numbers are, it's not just calculating it, I believe.
Any other questions? Comments? Okay. With that, I'm looking for a motion. I'll stop in tomorrow, Mary, and talk to you more about this, just because it doesn't make sense to me.
I'll make a motion that the amortization schedule option A be chosen for closing the MERS Division 10 group.
Second?
Motion made by Lee, supported by Chris. Roll call.
Mr. Ball?
Yep.
Mr. Oja?
No.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
No,
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
That's it for our business tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Before we go into the audience, the public comment period of time, I'd just like to take a moment and send the condolences of the city and the city staff and the council to the family of Albert Goodrow. Ace passed away a week ago, and anybody who knows, Ace was our regular audience here at the meeting. I think he's made most meetings and most of the council here. For decades, he's been a regular fixture here at the city council meetings. And as George's suggestion, just like to take a moment of silence just to recognize Mr. Goodrow and send our condolences to his family. Okay. Does anyone from the audience wish to address the council? If you do, please come on any topic. Please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 5 minutes. Anybody? Okay. Chris.
Nothing tonight?
George.
Yeah, I got, going through Ray's comments here, and I don't know if this is just something I picked up on, or, has it always been, Ray, or have we just started? I noticed that we're contributing $20,000 to basically support the golf pro at the golf course. Is this something that's always been?
Yeah, that's something that, that we had established through the, you know, we had an agreement when they built the clubhouse. And when Fred retired. The, we have a dues share agreement with them, that part of that is the dues, but the other is that when Fred was working, he was actually on our payroll. When Fred retired, that position went on to the Golf Commission payroll, but we have a responsibility because of the golf operations to take income or take greens fees. So what we did was I calculated out how much that would cost, or if we had somebody in there during the period of golf season, how much that would cost. And so that was our contribution at that point, for taking those greens fees.
Okay.
Under the other scenario, there was a lot of other activities that were going on that were more Golf Commission related that, we just said that, that if we put them on their payroll, they can handle that, that we were at one point handling ourselves, and that we shouldn't be handling it, so.
Has anybody really looked at the next, say, 2 years from now, how this is going to change? What are the liabilities going to change here? How are the cities going to handle this? Are we just going to wash our hands off of everything here, or if we? I know we're looking 2 years down the road, Ray, and
Yeah.
I'm just inquisitive here.
Well, when the loan is actually done, the dues sharing agreement will be done, and Mary and I already had a meeting to discuss that. We figured we better start talking about that, what's going to happen moving forward, because we're going to have to decide at that point how the operations are moving forward and what everybody's role is. So I think that over the next year, for sure, we should be talking about that, especially like during budget hearing. That's a good conversation to have as to what's the future, where are we going with with our plan out there.
Well, yes, I'm sure it would be nice for everybody to know up front what direction they're going to be headed in.
Right.
The city and them out there, so they know, either they got to start putting up their own money or what the deal is. And so everybody, or nobody's left in the dark here when that point comes. No, I really don't have too much else, Jeremy. The city's doing a heck of a job. Do they have any more leaks, Joe, that they are repaired, that they got to repair?
Yeah, the one by Brian's, we still have to repair.
Okay.
They haven't got it that one yet. And then there's one also on the end of section in like the 800 block.
Okay. Basically, we fared out quite well on
Well, so far,
yes, on major breaks.
The frost isn't out yet, but
Yeah.
all the breaks that we have repaired, 4 of them have been the services,
Service.
not the main,
Yeah.
so. We're
Yeah.
still getting frozen services,
Oh, yeah.
All
Now they're
three.
going to get worse now than
Yeah.
really.
so that's not going away as it warms up.
Yeah. I see everybody's been advising people not to shut their water off. Even TV is running ads to leave them run until the city notifies them, so
Right.
that's great. That's all, Jeremy.
Dr. Hayes.
Of course, our spring breakup is not going to be early this year, and I just want to make sure the dam is in good condition. I'm still worried about that broken gate.
The gate is a seal. The metal and the struts and everything to hold the gate are fine. It's just a seal on the bottom of it, and it leaks some water, so we're okay. As far as the rest of the dam goes,
And you got the repairs, and that's going
It's,
to be all
you know-
set for the big breakup, because there's a lot of water up there, and it's heading your way.
yeah, there is a lot of water, and we're making sandbags, we're buying pumps and hoses and everything that we've known what to do from historical events that have happened down there. If it gets too bad, we just will shut the hydro portion of it off and close the guard locks and try to protect the generation part of it if it gets too bad. But I suspect it's going to be a big water year. Do everything we can to protect it.
Well, if the weather keeps up the way it's going, it'll be a slow runoff. There'll be a lot, but it'll be coming slow.
I wouldn't count on it.
No, I think it's coming.
It's gonna come really quick, because it's staying cold too long, and all of a sudden it'll be 70 degrees overnight.
It was 70 in November, yesterday, today.
Yeah. So, but we're doing everything we can. We're on top of it.
Thursday, spring.
Anything else, Dr. Hayes? Please.
One question, in your extra papers here, Ray. Railroad Avenue project, the contractor kickoff meeting has been scheduled for Monday, March 24th with the utilities and MDOT. When is that? There's no time here.
It's at 9
I might
o'clock,
want to
isn't it?
stop in,
Not 9 in the morning.
9 in the morning.
9 AM.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
I just got a couple of things. The first one I wanted to touch on was something that's been talked about at the Parks and Rec, at the Planning Commission, at the community planning meetings, and that's the city website redo. It's just a reminder to the council, it's something we're gonna have to look at and really take a serious look at come budget, because it's not gonna be a small number to redo. But as the portal to the city that a lot of people are using to find out about us, I think it really needs to be redone. Ray's got a write-up about it in the last meeting packet and this packet. But it's just something to keep in mind for budget, that it's something I think we really need to do, because it keeps coming up, that it needs to be more attractive and needs to be designed better to attract, to get the attention of people who are using it to find out about us. And with the internet, we're gonna have to come budget time, we're gonna have to take a serious look at what we're doing with the rates and the rate structure. This week, we've increased our bandwidth again, and this week we peaked it again. And we plateaued for 3 days last week. While the colleges were on, some of the colleges anyway, were on spring break, we plateaued at our peak internet bandwidth for about 3 days, from what I understand, 2 to 3 days. And that slows the whole system down, and it causes, but the more we buy, the more we use. And I think we're gonna need to take a serious look at the rate structure and possibly setting something up for the high-end users, kind of like a data plan, like a cell phone data plan, where you're fine up to a point, but if you start going over that point, then you're gonna start having to pay more, or be slowed down or something. But that's just something to keep in mind come budget also.
I thought we were gonna have, take a look at the whole system, Jeremy,
Well, we are, I think.
on everything.
We are, but the internet rate thing is something that we're really gonna have to, because that's been going up and up faster than what we had even anticipated.
Is it paying for itself?
For now, I believe it still is.
Yeah. Right now it is.
Joe, anything else?
No, I have no.
Mary, anything else? Tricia? Jay?
No, I have nothing. Thank you very much.
Ray?
No, happy St. Patrick's Day. I wore my green tie. You see your green, so.
We have no closed session this evening. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Motion made by Chris, supported by George. Roll call.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yep.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Minnick?
Yes.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.